Welcome to the 21st century. Here's what you've missed. You have been frozen since about September 1945. Fortunately, we have now found you. Unfortunately, that means that you've missed more than 60 years of American life. This presentation will help you understand some of the key events that you've missed. Afterward, you will have multiple 3-hour sessions every day for the next few months with your psychiatrist for full recovery. Here are some of the big things you've missed: the Cold War, the Vietnam War, the Iraq War, and many new technology and inventions. So here is a list of all of the presidents that have been US presidents while you were frozen. First, we have Harry Truman, then Dwight Eisenhower, then John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan, George H. Bush, Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Barack Obama. Let's start the presentation with Great Big World Map. Now, in 1945, the arms race started, and it lasted all the way to 1991. So here's some more information about the arms race. Now, it was a competition between the US and the Soviet Union to see who could build the most nuclear weapons. They both built large arsenals of nuclear weapons and other weapons. This also strengthened the idea of MAD, M-A-D. We'll hear about that later. Fortunately, after the Cold War ended, many of these weapons were destroyed. Now we have mutually assured destruction, MAD, also known as MAD. This was a military strategy, and the idea was that if two opposing sides used nuclear weapons, then that would result in total destruction for both sides. And this was one of the main reasons during the Cold War that the US and the Soviet Union avoided direct conflict. And this also spurred on the arms race. So I'm sure you've all heard the word communism before, but you may not exactly know what it is. Let me tell you, it's a social political way to run a government, and it aims for common ownership, no private property, no wage labor, and free access to articles and other resources. Basically, that means that the government owns everything, but gives its citizens whatever they need. And it's similar to socialism, but not the same. And unfortunately, since it's based off of everybody gets the same, and we humans are greedy and selfish, usually the people in charge, so the government, would take the best slice of the pie. So it usually results in dictatorship. Then we have Joseph Stalin. He was the Soviet Union dictator. He also fought in the Russian Revolution. And he fought with the Allies in World War II. And he was a communist. He worked very hard, like in the Russian Revolution, to bring communism into the Soviet Union. He was born on December 21st, 1878, and he died on March 5th, 1953. He attempted to expand communism all over the world, which made him very unpopular in America. He also urged the Soviet Union to participate in the space race and the arms race. Next we have Nikita Khrushchev. He was the Russian leader from 1958 to 1964. So he was the Russian leader right after Stalin. He helped in the de-Stalinization, which means that he tried to get rid of many of the laws that Stalin tried to work for. He also attempted to ease relations with the US. Unfortunately, after the U-2 incident, he grew angry toward the US. He joined the political party in 1918, which is the year that it was found, and later most of his accomplishments were repealed, so he didn't actually do very much for our lives today. So here's the world map again. It's still 1945, but this time our event is the space race, which also lasted all the way to 1991. So here are some more facts about the space race. It was a competition between the US and the Soviet Union, just like the arms race. But this time it wasn't about weapons, it was about who would be first to explore outer space. The Soviet Union technically won when they sent a satellite, Sputnik, on October 4th, 1957. But America was first to send a man to the moon. We sent Neil Armstrong to the moon on July 20th, 1969. In the end, there wasn't a clear victory, but the US and the Soviet Union started to work together to build new space stations and to explore outer space. So this time we only have a map of North America, because our next event, the Second Red Scare, was only in the US. So in the Second Red Scare, America was afraid of communism. We made false accusations against our citizens of being communists, and the US passed a series of laws to harshly discourage communism or communist behavior. The Red Scare has ended now, and there is no more national fear of communism. However, it lasted all the way to 1991. During the Second Red Scare, it was all about containment. Containment is the act of trying to stop the spread of communism. This all began when people started to fear communism, which was the Second Red Scare. And people feared communism because of all the propaganda that depicted communism as a bad way to run a government. Truman even pledged to support countries who are resisting communism in the Truman Doctrine. You'll hear about the Truman Doctrine a little later. Today, communism is in only 5 countries, so containment worked pretty well. Containment is also the reason why the US intervened in the Korean War and the Vietnam War. McCarthyism was also a big part of the Second Red Scare. McCarthyism comes from the US Senator Joseph McCarthy. It is the act of accusing someone of treason or disloyalty without proof. And, as I said before, it was part of the Second Red Scare. During the Second Red Scare, thousands of Americans were accused of being communists, even though it was never really proven. The primary targets were government employees, entertainment industry, and educators. And here he is, Joseph McCarthy. He was the U.S. Senator of Wisconsin from 1947 to 1957. And Joseph McCarthy himself accused 205 government workers of being communists. These accusations were never proven. However, it launched a major hunt for communism, which started the Second Red Scare. Later, accusations without proof were called McCarthyism, as seen on the previous slide. The next historical figure I'm going to talk about is J. Edgar Hoover. He was the director of the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigations, for 48 years, and he really reformed the agency. Not only did he reform the agency, but he also established the world's largest fingerprint file. Soon, the FBI was one of the world's outstanding law enforcement agencies, as it is today. Some say he abused his power, but there is no question he did a lot for this country. Then, a year later, in 1946, we had the Communist Revolution in China. During the Communist Revolution in China, which was also known as the War of Liberation or the Chinese Civil War, which lasted from April 1927 to October 1949, you might ask why I said that it started in 1946 when it actually started in 1927. Well, the thing is that technically it started in 1927, but actual fighting didn't occur until 1946. This war was between the Chinese Nationalist Party and the Communist Party of China. The leader of the Communist Party was Mao Zedong. You'll hear about him very soon. One of the most powerful people in the world. Soon after the war was over and the Communist Party had won, China joined the Soviet Union, and together they became one of the most powerful communist countries in the world. Here he is, Mao Zedong. He led China's struggle to become a communist country, and he was one of the world's most powerful people in history. Together with 11 other people, he founded the Communist Party in 1921. Soon after that, war had broken out between the nationalists and the communists. After a successful victory, Mao became the Chinese leader, and he formed China into a tightly controlled society faster than anyone could have imagined. Then a year later, in 1947, we had the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan encouraged European countries to work together for economic recovery. This plan started in April 1947, but the US didn't just encourage European countries to work together, they also sent about $13 billion worth of food, machinery, and other resources to help with the reconstruction. This plan ended in 1952, and the idea came from Secretary of State George Marshall. Then we had the Truman Doctrine. In this doctrine, Truman announced international resistance against communist aggression. He also guaranteed American aid to free nations resisting communism. This last fact helped Turkey and Greece very much because they were supported by the US while fighting the Soviet Union. Soon, Greece and Turkey had joined the NATO, which guaranteed them full protection. And this was set forth on March 12, 1947. And here we have President Harry Truman himself. He was the US President from 1945 to 1953. He created the Truman Doctrine. He also supplied the Berliners during the Berlin blockade. He also tried to establish a military alliance between the Western nations by creating the NATO. And during the end of his presidency, he helped South Korea in the Korean War.